Dr. Kenneth Tom is an associate professor in the Department of Human Communication Studies at California State University at Fullerton in the Communicative Disorders program. He was trained in vocal performance at the New England Conservatory in Boston. He completed his master's in communicative disorders at San Diego State University and also his PhD in speech-language pathology and audiology at the University of Iowa. His teaching and research focus is on performance voice, voice disorders, voice acoustics, and physiology and multicultural issues in voice. His clinical focus is on the treatment of voice disorders, including holistic approaches integrating breath, movement, and manual therapies. And I did not know this, Dr. Tom, that you're also a certified yoga teacher and yoga therapist, and you serve on the faculty of the American Yoga Institute's Yoga Therapist Training Program. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I had a set of questions I emailed to you and Melody both ahead of time. And so I'll be asking some of the same questions, but I suspect probably your answers will be different. I mean, this is so interesting to hear very diverse stories, all from the API community. So same first question to you is, how did you get started in the field?
It was kind of a bumpy trail. I actually, as an undergrad, coming out of high school, thought I was going to be a foreign language and math teacher, and had started up at UC Berkeley with that in mind. But just for the heck of it, because of my own personal interests, and to the dismay of my parents, I decided to audition for music major, and did that. So I was a double major in music and in foreign language, in German, because I was interested in foreign language and linguistics. And even though I didn't know it then, just speech sound. I was really interested in phonology of different languages, having grown up speaking a Toyosan dialect and really observing all the kind of Englishes that were around me growing up in San Francisco. So I didn't really know anything about speech pathology until, because my first inkling was, I studied abroad in my junior year, and one of my friends in Germany, his girlfriend was a logopedin. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it's kind of like a speech teacher." I said, "Well, what does she do?" He says, "Well, she works in the ear, nose, throat office, and she does therapy for voice." And as soon as he said that, I said, I want to meet her. I want to see what she does at work. So I visited her and shadowed on a session. And that was the first time I thought, I could do this. This would be fun. And that was the first little seed. I didn't even know what logopedy was in the United States. And so when I came back, it was in the back of my mind. I went through music school. I thought, I'm going to give it my best until I'm 30. And if I'm not making as much as, say, a secretary by the time I'm 30 off of music, I have to find something else to do. And so those kind of things came together. I was in Boston at the time. I graduated music school and was turning 30. And I took a couple of classes in speech pathology. I took a speech science class, language acquisition, and I was fascinated. I just thought it was terrific. And luckily enough, one of the audiology professors, Mary Florentine, took me under wing and put me in her audiology lab. It's the first inkling I ever had of what is data collection, what is using all these gadgets she had, taking down data, writing it out in a report. So I learned a lot about the research and planted like a little seed even then.
Wow.
So it was really kind of going back and forth. I finally ended up going to San Diego State. And when I was at San Diego State, I was lucky with my advisors. I first had Siddhanand Singh before he retired. And the advice he gave me was very brief, but he says, you know what you have to do, young man, is when your teacher speaks, you spend 100% of all your attention. When you do your work, you spend 100% of all your attention and you'll be fine. And that, he was serious. He looked at me like, I'm telling you the truth. This is what it is. He then retired, and very fortunately, the person who became my advisor was Lily Chang. So I already had a model in terms of, wow, this is a possibility maybe, because none of my professors had been, anything but white professors. And so I thought, wow, Chinese people can, well, okay. And so she gave me a lot of freedom when she was a supervisor clinically, and when I worked on some of the research projects she gave me a lot of freedom and responsibility. And I saw, just like Melody does, those kinds of things, when they're given to you, they force you to learn independently, and they let you know little by little that you can do it. You actually can do it. It's better to struggle in private than to let everybody know how hard you worked on it. But it was a great experience to do that. The thing that made me go on further was after my voice disorders course. And I knew early on that's what I wanted to do. I thought, this can't be all I'm going to learn. This is such a small amount. And so I didn't know how to amplify that. I was looking for that through my CF. I finished my CF and thought, neurogenics isn't exactly where I want to be. I know I want to do medical speech pathology and something more in voice. And so I just got some advice from some of my previous profs, and they said, you should go to a PhD program. And I said, are you kidding? And they said, well, and then I talked to some of my musician friends, and I said, I'm going to be 40 by the time I finish this. And they would say, you're going to be 40 anyway. What do you want to be, 40 with it, or 40 without it, or 40 and not have tried? So from growing up in the Bay Area, where there are a lot of Asians, where, my mom got along fine, never speaking English, and going to Boston, where there are actually quite a few Asians when I went to school, and some decent Cantonese restaurants in that little dinky Chinatown. I see you smiling, Kelly. And then coming to Iowa was really strange. I feel for Melody when I think of, oh my God, Carbondale in the 1980s. Oh my God. Because I was in Iowa in 1988. And here in a university town like that, you get the opposite. You get this thing of, you look like me, and they speak slowly because they don't know if you can speak English. And so I would say, I can speak English. I'm from here, But I also loved the fact that, it was a town where if you went to get your shoes repaired or went to a restaurant, they would take your check without an ID. And that was amazing to a kid growing up from a big city. So I did that. I must say I was lucky, because a lot of the folks in the labs, the doc students, were Chinese or Korean. So it seemed when I was coming up, maybe that first big rush of PhD students in a lot of speech path departments, they were getting quite a few Asian, especially East Asian, so Korean and Chinese students, PhD students. So there was absolutely no kind of issues with seeing the potential and the smarts that these students had, even if their English wasn't perfect. I remember talking to one master's student who was from Hong Kong. She said that she was switching to audiology because she didn't think her English was good enough. I said, it only needs to be good enough to really communicate what you want. She says, I don't know if I can do that. And I said, you're doing it now with me. You can do this. You can do this. And it was hard for her because the messages she got from other folks were, you don't talk exactly like the people who grew up here, in the Midwest. I said, you don't have to. And you may not work here anyway. You have so many things to give to your future patients. So I can't remember actually if she stayed with speech path or if she just felt, no, I'm just going to do audiology so I can sit behind an audiometer. But the master's level was probably harder, I think, at that time in the late 80s, early 90s, than it was in PhD program.
So this is already so interesting. I think, to see the differences in your experience and Melody's. I mean, there's a gender difference. There's, being born and raised in the US, in San Francisco in particular. That time, maybe there's something particular to that time in the entry of Asian professionals, especially into the higher, more advanced training. The thing that I'm hearing you say is that being around all of these very highly accomplished Asian colleagues was a support to you.
Yeah, I think, you always look around. When you come into a room or you come into an association or a group, you look around. You look around for people with whom you might have some commonalities. And one of the first things you look at is for mentors to maybe look at the way they moved through the career and how they dealt with challenges and discomfort and prejudice that comes up. We internalize a lot of those, and so sometimes we don't even, part of the self-confidence thing, if you feel at times you lack self-confidence, is that we've internalized some of these external prejudices or attitudes. And when you can see that's happened, that can be framed. Those are just their ideas. And like Melody said, they don't know who I am. So maybe I need to figure out the way to let them know who I am and show them how I can be useful in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, it's kind of odd. Maybe this is an old person thing to do, but I was reading letters from friends from high school and early college. And when I went to Berkeley, it was 1971. This was like right at the time of the third world, all the third world stuff was coming up. And Asian American groups started forming in the Bay Area in the late 1960s. And it was the first time groups of Asian Americans got together and actually picketed things and actually spoke out with bullhorns at protests and stuff. And it was kind of amazing because nobody did that when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. And so suddenly there's this idea of this is a possibility that you can sort of be there and assert yourself. That was a positive influence for me.
The community got loud at that point.
It got loud, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think we've talked about some of the potential challenges of being of Asian descent and being in this discipline? Do you think it comes with any rewards?
Oh, I think it does. Personally, I mean, when you figure out what it is you really want to do and the place it is in your life. Some people want a job that's interesting and gives them a lot of satisfaction, work satisfaction, the satisfaction that they're helping folks. Some people, it's a true calling. It's almost a spiritual thing. They work all the time because they feel they're put here on earth to do this. And for other things, other people, maybe it's very professional in orientation. But if you know what that work is for you, there's so many rewards from just doing the work. I've been fortunate. I've been teaching for probably about 25 years now or so. And the privilege of meeting students, and like Melody said, trying to look at students holistically as whole persons and addressing or trying to see where they're coming from in terms of where they are in their emotional growth, where they are in their intellectual growth, in their capacities to express, their capacities to know who they are themselves, their relationship with themselves. That helps me give what little seeds, to plant little seeds, hopefully, that may bear fruit later.
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky that some of my students have really moved forward. I have one student, for example, who in graduate school was a B-ish student. And we all know that means, oh, horrible, I gotta be. But she was not at all interested in voice at the time. And now, something like 10 years later, it's all she does. I saw her at a conference and said, she says, little did I know that I would love this more than anything else, besides her two babies. She loves doing voice therapy more than anything else. And it was just planting that seed that it's possible to really find joy in your work there. And now she's doing it.
What for you, with all of these, it sounds like you had support, you had the passion, you're finding a lot of rewards in your work now. What were some distinct challenges that you remember from that had to do with your Asian, just your Asian lineage? Are there any? Is there anything like that? Has it played a role?
I keep thinking I was lucky because of where I was at different times. Mm-hmm. This may have something to do with it. When I was in undergrad school, I was a classical singing student and did some theater. And I actually wanted to do music theater. But when you think about how many Asian or Chinese or Japanese or Korean actors you see now in 2016, how few there are and how unimportant many of the roles they play, if you can imagine in 1980. And so in the middle of all that, I was thinking, I'm not going to get a lot of roles. I'm not going to get work just because of the way the body looks externally. And that was kind of a crazy thing to come to deal with, like we are all born as accidents of our time when we're born. There are big stars now, like Sandra Oh, who's Korean, and she had a big TV role, and she's done films and stuff like that. She has a hard time getting work too, and that's now. Mm-hmm. But most people in the performing arts, except for music, pure like classical music or opera, you can't look different than what they want on the stage or the screen. And so, coming to a field like speech pathology and comparison, we really are not judged like that. We're judged by our capacity to help people and our ability to communicate with them and create some sort of healing relationship in the session. So when I could see how much I could succeed with my abilities in the therapy room, that was a huge reward. There were times, there are times when you get into social situations where people don't know exactly how to treat you. Like, if you're in a majority white situation, do they talk to you socially like you're quote unquote one of them or not? One of the interesting things was being in a lab at University of Iowa, where everybody had a family. Like a lot of the guys were married and had kids. And so being gay, I didn't have that kind of response. And at that point, I wasn't comfortable being out in the early 90s. So it was kind of weird because it would be at lab meetings, everybody would say, hi, my name is Joe, and my wife Susie and I have 14 children, and we do this, and we do this, and I do that. And then they come to me, and I go, I'm fine. How are you? And they go on to the next one. My name is Joe, and my wife and I, we have, and it made you feel sort of out of place. And then one other Chinese guy, Jack Zhang, who was in the lab at the time, said, yeah, my wife fine. Yeah. My daughter fine. So you didn't really fit into the social network that way. But otherwise, I just think I've been dang lucky.
It's really so interesting to hear the relative perspective of coming from performance, where the face and the body very much matters, and coming into our field where I had always, heard that because our business is speaking, that, has maybe a lot more to do with language. And in fact, we have a side discussion going on here in the chat box about accent, which I'm going to pose to both you and Melody in a minute. So, with the last couple of questions before we open it up for everybody, I'd like to know, do you think there are ways that the field, speech language pathology, audiology, and also the research sciences and communicative disorders can support Asian Pacific Islander faculty, practitioners, with new people coming in? How can we support each other and recruit new people?
I think personal relationships are number one.
Mm-hmm.
I think we come from cultures where personal relationships are important, but face-to-face meetings and mentorship are really important because they give the mentee a vision of where they might go and a sense of someone who's moved in their path before, how they did it. Not that they have to do the same thing. They can go their own way, but they see one pattern and they can maybe riff on it and do a variation on that. If people can be visible and mentor, and by mentor, I don't mean necessarily formally, but a meaningful 20-minute conversation in the hallway at ASHA, and sharing that you have some friends and colleagues in common, and being open to further communication down the line is really important, because we know referrals and recommendations, those are all really important. I think being visible, like Melody says, when you make known what you do, you not only are affecting your patients and your own work in the environment, but you're acting as a model. You're visible, and other people, do you know Melody OuYoung? It's, oh, I do. It's, do you know she's looked at Qigong? That's, I've thought of that too. And so it's, you start feeling there's some value in ideas because other people in the community don't think it's strange.
It's like what you said in the beginning of your career when you first started, just seeing, for example, Dr. Lily Cheng, it's like it opens that possibility. You can imagine yourself there a little more.
Yeah, and watching how Lily did so much and does so much, and how she juggles that schedule really made me see, wow, there are many ways of getting your work done, having balance with your family, not giving up one for the other. And that was important for me to see too.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for new people coming in or students?
I love Melody's advice. This is advice, the same advice my father told me. You have to be better than them. You have to study really hard and be better than them. And, he grew up in a time where even if you were better than them, it didn't make any difference. You'd never get the job. Mm. But he wanted his kids to have that opportunity. And that's what he told us. You really have to be good at your stuff. You can't BS around or pretend you are. In the end, if you don't study and really know your stuff, you're going to have false self-confidence, which is worse than not having any at all. Hmm. It can be very self-destructive to have this overblown sense of self-confidence that's not based on secure sense of knowledge and clinical experience. The other thing is what Melody said about being able to present yourself, to speak in a way that's clear and understandable and reflects your personality too, so that when you come into a group, you can be part of it quickly and you can make your contributions quickly. Most of the places I've been in with meetings, people want to get work done. So you quickly let people know clearly what your role is, what you can contribute, what you're willing to add to the group's effort, and then go and do your job. The other thing I would advise too is that Melody mentioned so well is keeping a sense of personal balance. Mm-hmm. Because so many of us are brought up with parents who, the positive is value education. The negative way to say it is make you feel terrible if you get anything less than an A. And if you absorb that too much, right, the perfectionism can become almost a mental illness and become self-destructive. So it's having that balance, knowing what's really important and what's sort of important, and really, like a quiz, not important at all. Okay, like think about, will I remember this in 5 or 10 years? A lot of stuff you won't. So if the fewer emotional disasters or traumas you have that are self-inflicted, the better things are as you go on. The other is really taking the support and love of those around you. When I was in the middle of my PhD program, I almost left. I was struggling. I felt external pressure to become what I thought of as a second-rate engineer, versus a really good bridge between speech, language, and music. And it was my singing voice teacher at the time, Bob Eckert, who was at the piano, and he said, Kenneth, you're building a bridge. Of course it's hard because you're coming from two sides, but you're doing something really, really valuable. Don't give up. And that encouragement actually carried me through the next year. So it was not my speech pathology mentor, it was my singing teacher who, from an outside view, said, we need people who have the background and interest in building bridges between two things. And really, a lot of our lives is like that. It's taking two things that may be separate to other people, but they come together in us and in our work.
You're the contribution.
Yeah.
You're what is to be offered, it sounds like. So we have some themes here between you and Melody of community and relationships, of competence and being good and passionate with what you do. The sense of wellness as being very big, in terms of life balance. Thank you both for this wonderful advice.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.